Hello everybody, my name is Corey. I'm here taking an afternoon walk in January, which means at 5 p.m. it is already pitch black outside. I want to do a video series, kind of like a podcast series almost, about learning to swim. And I work better, I think better while I'm walking, so here we are. I'm going to walk and talk. Feel free to mostly listen. I want to start with the super basics, which is basically putting your face in the water. And I'm going to do this in two parts, one more adult focused and the other more focused on kids. Before I get into it, I'll say a little about myself. My name is Corey. I was a competitive swimmer for 10 years, doing high school swim, club team, master swimming, attended national level swim meets. I've been involved in teaching swimming in various capacities for over a decade now, whether that be swim lessons, summer league swim teams. I've been a high school swim coach for the last 5 years, and now I'm the owner and lead instructor of Stride Swim School. So I've been around swimming for a while. I've seen it from all number of angles, whether it be complete beginners, very advanced swimmers, young swimmers, older swimmers who are just getting started, who are already advanced. And so I feel like I've got a lot to share, and this is going to help me organize my own thoughts as well. So let's get started. First thing for swimming is very basic, but not so basic, which is learning how to put your face in the water. Now, there's kind of a few things to consider. When I think about putting your face in the water, there's the mouth, the nose, the eyes, and the ears. And for kids, each has its own sort of complications. Now, I want to kind of orient this video towards parents who are thinking about getting their kid into swimming, or maybe they want to do some swim lessons themselves with their kids before going into a swim school, whatever it may be. So let's get started with putting your mouth in the water. This is pretty easy because our mouth can be closed. And for kids, I like to start with just blowing bubbles. It's kind of an active thing to do. If you just tell a kid to put their face in the water, they're gonna say, well, I don't want to do that. But when you say, oh, let's do bubbles, it seems kind of fun. One of the main things that is complicated for kids, especially young kids, is just understanding their breath, how their mouth and nose actually work. As human beings, as adults, we understand I can breathe in, I can breathe out, I can hold my breath, I can close my mouth, I can blow air out of my nose. We have a lot of control, and kids often have never had to, let's say, hold their breath or, think about blowing air specifically out of their nose. I mean, you get a kid to, try to get a 2-year-old to swallow a pill, and it just doesn't happen. They can't sort of override a lot of these systems. And so I like to, when I first start getting kids into the water, I'll say, okay, blow bubbles. And they kind of put their mouth in and no bubbles come out. And so a good sort of visualization of this, something physical they can feel, is I'll just blow on their face. Which seems kind of silly, but they'll kind of get shocked back when a little bit of air hits their face, and they can understand, oh, that's what it means to blow air out of my mouth. Okay. And then it's just do that in the water. And this is very basic. Their chin's in the water, their mouth's in the water, and because they're blowing air out, they generally might get a little water in their mouth afterwards, but that's pretty simple. They can just kind of spit it out. So the mouth's really easy. Mouth can be closed, and they don't want to blow bubbles out of it, don't want to get water into it. And so mouth's pretty simple. And then we get to the nose, which is a lot more complicated, especially for kids. Now, I want you to kind of think of the nose as a glass. So your nose is like the opening in the glass, and your lungs are basically the empty glass. Now, if I were to take this glass with the rim up like this, I'm holding it, I could drink it, and I just put it into water. As soon as the rim gets below the water level, all the water rushes in and fills that glass. And because we can't just close our nose, water may potentially rush in. Now, if I take that glass and I flip it upside down and put it into a bunch of water, the air will remain inside the glass. And so I think a lot of you, or myself included, I can sort of explain the physics behind it. I'm no expert, but if you've ever jumped into water and you feel, or with swim trunks, and you feel all that water that gets trapped up in your swim trunks, kind of understand that, oh, air can sort of, when it's in this, when there's a top to it, air will sort of remain in. And so the reason why I bring this up is because when we're putting our face in the water, our nose can't be closed, just kind of an opening like a glass that you can drink out of. And so we got to think about how we're putting our face in the water. I'm sure most people who've been in a pool for long enough have that horrible feeling of water going up your nose. And so to avoid this, we want to think about, okay, well, from what angle am I putting my face in the water? Now, if we're looking down at the bottom of the pool, our nose is down. It's like having that glass upside down. So water's not going to crawl up your nose and into your lungs, because water doesn't do that in relation to air. However, if we're on our back, if you're looking up at the ceiling and you go underwater, you're gonna get a bunch of water rushing into your nose. Now, if we're kind of straight up and down, I can put my face in okay, but the moment I lean back a little bit, you could start to feel the pressure of water trying to get in to your lungs. So what I recommend for kids is looking down when they're gonna put their face in, especially because kids have a lot of trouble with nose bubbles. Just looking down is gonna kind of solve all those initial problems, right? So anything with face in is leaning forward. We're trying to look at the ground. I often put toys on the ground or something they can look at to get their attention, and then we'll have them put their face in. Once swimmers start getting a little bit more advanced, it becomes important to know how to blow bubbles out of your nose, because sometimes we are going to be on our back. If you're on your side in the water, you're going to start to feel a little bit of water start to creep up your nose. It's not bad, and it's not going to be horrible like if you were to go underwater on your back, but it is uncomfortable. And so once I have swimmers reaching the level where they're doing freestyle, I generally tend to start really dialing in blowing bubbles out of their nose. Now, for little kids, it can be good to start this process earlier. And what this looks like is just like how I blow on their face to kind of help them get that feeling of, oh, that's what it is to blow air out. I often tell kids, like, blow boogers out of your nose. It's something they've done before. They feel when they get stuffed up, they're sick, and they can suck the boogers in or suck them out. And that can be a good sort of experience to relate back to blowing bubbles out. And if you can kind of mention, oh, like blow boogers out, okay, and you can see them kind of blowing air out, and you just tell them, okay, now let's do that in the water. And if they're blowing air out of their nose, then they're not going to get water up their nose. So it's possible to be on your back underwater and not get water up your nose, but you have to be blowing out enough air to offset the pressure of the water trying to come into your nose. Now, for little kids, their lungs are small. I'm never going to put them on their back underwater and have them blow bubbles. But we were talking about the position of either face down being safe, or up. If you're upright, that can also be a good position. Not quite as secure, but that's okay. But once we get into dunks or submerging or jumping into the pool, what happens is water is going to shoot up your nose because of the pressure of, if you're jumping in, you're kind of forcefully entering in the water. If kids want to dive down, they're going to get the same thing of water kind of going up into their nose. And for those two experiences, for either jumping in or diving down, I try to not have kids be plugging their nose all the time. When they're plugging their nose, they're never going to learn the skill. It also, when you have one hand on your nose, that's one hand that you can't be using to either swim or grab the side of the pool or grab anything. You want both your hands available to help you swim. And if we're just used to plugging our nose, if that ever fails and we don't plug it right, it's just way better to know how to blow bubbles out of your nose. So I'll start getting kids to do bubbles out of their nose. We'll do a lot of submerging stuff where they'll kind of feel it, and it's good to know, to have that awareness of just pushing air out of your nose to offset that. So the nose is definitely the most complicated, just because of the lack of coordination with kids consciously being able to blow bubbles out of their nose, and because getting water in your mouth isn't so bad, but water in your nose really hurts. And so a lot of kids can get immediately turned off by that sensation and not want to put their face in at all. And so having the right setup can be really good. Now let's get to the eyes. Talked a lot about the nose. There are some swim instructors who recommend starting without goggles. I think at a really young age, this can be okay. Goggles can be kind of uncomfortable, and getting kids used to having some water in their eyes is perfectly acceptable and good. Now, once we get into trying to put our face in the water and push off the wall, which is a very intro skill, kids want to be able to see. I mean, if you're doing something that's scary and then I blindfold you while you're doing it, it's even scarier. And so giving kids the option to see what they're doing, to see me, they want to know that I'm close to them because I'm there to help them. And so all of a sudden, if the world goes dark, and especially if their ears are in the water too, they're not hearing anything, they can't breathe, having one less point of reassurance, which is, okay, the well's over there, not that far from the swim instructor, I can open my eyes. Goggles are just great. So I highly recommend goggles. And once kids get advanced enough, they're going to have that comfort of just swimming, where all of a sudden closing their eyes for a little bit isn't so bad. And so I think taking the goggles off later and getting kids used to swimming without goggles and either slightly opening their eyes in the water or just keeping their eyes closed, it's better to start with goggles. For a lot of really young kids, they don't want goggles on their face. They're kind of uncomfortable. Especially kid goggles are not often made super well. They're kind of designed to be used for a few times and then thrown away, because you have a 1-year-old and you're trying to put goggles on him, he's gonna grow out of these goggles so fast. So if you have a kid who really doesn't want to put goggles on his face, just try putting them on his head. So have him around his head, doesn't have to put them on his eyes, just have the goggles around. If you can get goggles on his face or her face, don't immediately force them into the water. I think just splashing them, and they'll kind of realize, oh, when I get splashed and I have my goggles on, I don't get water in my eyes. So I'll often put the goggles on for the kids that don't want to go in the water, sit them on the side of the pool, and just kick really, really hard with my legs, making a ton of splashes, and their face all gets wet, and they're kind of feeling that, you know, splashes on their mouth, splashes on their face, but with the goggles on, they don't get water in their eyes. And then they might start to connect the dots of, oh, these goggles are nice. I like these goggles. And so that's a good way to introduce kids to goggles. But yeah, kids are not going to want to wear them all the time, and that's okay. But trying to get them to realize how useful they can be and that they can see when they do put their face in the water is great. And most kids who figure that out really like goggles. And so it's not that difficult for them to keep them on once they realize what they're useful for. So we talked about the mouth, the nose, the eyes. Let's go into the ears. For a lot of kids, the ears can just be uncomfortable, especially if they're not just dunking their head in the water right away. It can be kind of jarring when you're hearing all these sounds and then you put your face in the water and all of a sudden everything goes silent. And it is a weird sensation to get water in your ears for the first time. And so I like to take a kid and just tip them to the side and tip them to the other side, just getting their ears wet. bit by bit. And this can be kind of fun. It's like, pick a side. Which side do you want to go? This way or this way? And they'll pick one, and then you tip them to that side, and you're getting their ear wet. Once they're getting more comfortable with this, you can start getting their eyes wet, maybe their mouth in the water a little bit. And kids will have fun with it, and they'll feel it. And then to get their ears wet without having to put their face in the water, putting a kid on their back is a good way to do that. Now, I will do a later video on how to introduce kids to floating on their back, because being able to float and kick on your back is by far the most important skill in swimming. And that's true for any level of swimming. Maybe not the super top competitive level, but for most casual swimmers, if you can kick on your back, you're going to be okay. If you can roll to your back, and kick on your back, you're good. I often bring up in movies when people are sitting in the middle of the ocean, maybe they got in a boat crash or something and they're stranded. You see them treading water, which is basically they're vertical and their head's all the way out of the water, and they're using their arms and legs to go like this and kick. That's really hard. Treading water is a skill, and it's very difficult. And when your whole head's out of the water, it's really hard to keep it that way. And so just leaning onto your back and floating on your back is really good. And so getting kids comfortable on their back, which means getting their ears in the water, is huge. So the ears are mostly desensitization. There's not a lot of tricks behind it. It's mostly just get their ears wet. And we'll go into how to get them on their back later. So that's kind of it for the 4 topics for getting your face in the water. Now let's kind of get into some more general advice I have for kids. Unlike adults, kids aren't really motivated to just put their face in for no reason. When adults come in for classes, they're very much like, I want to swim. I realize this is important for swimming. So even if it's uncomfortable, I'm going to do it. Whereas kids are more like, I don't want to do it, might not do it. And some kids have a really good appreciation for, this adult is telling me to do something, therefore I have to do it. Other kids will just say no, and that's okay. And so there has to be some sort of other motivation. I've kind of found 2 tricks that work really well for this. The first is putting kid in water that they can stand in, and then putting a toy that sinks on the ground, and then saying, hey, look at that toy that's on the ground. Can you grab it with your hand? And this is great because it has them looking down, which is the best position to put their face in. And if you have the depth of the pool correct, they won't be able to reach it without putting their face in. And so all of a sudden, wow, I got to put my face in to do something. Therefore, it's worth it to put my face in. For some kids, this works great. Other kids, they kind of aren't into it. And so another thing I like to do is once a kid puts their face in, you go, oh, wow, that was like 2 seconds with your face in the water. Can you do 3 seconds? How about I count to 3 while you hold your face in? And you see them go, oh, okay. They like that sort of gamifying of it. And so as soon as they put their face in the water, even if it's just their nose and mouth and maybe a little bit of their goggles or their eyes, their ears can be out of the water, you start counting. 1, 2, 3, and keep counting as long as they keep their face in, and lots of positive assurance of, wow, you can hold your breath so good, that's so great. And kids will naturally want to go for more. Sometimes they need a little encouragement, like, hey, how about 5 seconds now? Oh, wow, okay. Other kids, oh, I'm going to try for 6. That works really good. And I generally don't push it. I'm not going to say, hey, let's do 80 seconds of holding your breath. No, it'll be maybe 10 seconds max. And some kids will voluntarily want to do more than that. I will never really push a kid over 8 or 9 seconds. And even when it's pushing them to do more, I'm never holding their head in the water or punishing them in any way if they can't do it. It's more like, oh, you did 7 seconds, let's see if you can do 8. And once they did 9, maybe they get 10, it's, wow, that's amazing, let's try to do it again. It's not, let's go for more and more and more and more and more. Kids are small. They're not really great at holding their breath. They got small lungs. So to be able to do a lot of the basic skills in swimming, you really only need to be able to hold your breath for 10 seconds. So I'm not going to push it over that. Now let's talk about another concept, which is a lot of, especially young kids, don't really know what it means to hold their breath. You'll say, okay, we're going to put our face in. And when you see an adult go to hold their breath, they go, and they hold a bunch of air in their lungs. And kids will just be looking at you, their mouth closed, and then just dunk their face right in. So they didn't take in a bunch of air beforehand. So naturally, they're going to need to breathe right after that. They're probably a little nervous. Their heart rate's up a little bit. And they're probably breathing relatively quickly. And then they go to put the face in, and they can only last a few seconds. And then they're done. And so this is something I encourage a lot of parents to do outside of class. That's been super helpful. I mean, this has been a game changer for me, which is when your kid is relaxed, maybe before bed, kind of explain to them what breathing is, essentially, what it is to breathe out, what it is to breathe in. Because when kids are during class, they're maybe nervous, there's other kids making a lot of noise, and it's not really the ideal space for me to explain to all of them what it is to breathe out and breathe in and hold your breath in. And so this is something parents are best suited to do outside of swim class, which is just teach your kid the vocabulary and the sort of physical movements with the breath. And that's been huge. So let's do a quick recap here, just to see if there's anything I haven't mentioned yet. Went through the eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, kind of some general tips around teaching the kids what breathing is, toys, counting strategy. I have lots of stuff I could say, but I think to keep this under 30 minutes, we'll kind of wrap it up here. So yeah, that's all the breathing specific stuff, kind of focused on kids. I'm gonna do another walk and talk, hopefully when it's not so dark next time, more in the morning, and we'll do a more adult focused putting your face in the water. So thank you for listening. I hope you got something valuable out of this. I'm gonna be posting this on the Stride Swim School social media. So if you have any questions, post them in the comments. I will answer anything. My goal is to help. I'm truly blessed to be able to teach people how to swim. It's such an important skill, and you know, if I teach swim classes for 10 years and one person uses their swimming ability to get themselves out of a potentially dangerous situation, that's amazing. So thank you for listening. I'll go on the light for a second. All right, that's it. Goodbye.